When I was looking for my first and second job, always in the back of my head, I had this thought, but why would they even hire me? Why would they talk to me? I just started with design. I know basically nothing. They are so much more knowledgeable and so much smarter than me. And what if in the middle of the meeting, they will just stand up and say, you know nothing, you can contribute nothing. Why did you even come here? Just leave. Sounds like peak anxiety or just a very common experience of people who have so-called imposter syndrome. And today I will tell you how I cured my imposter syndrome during a very short meeting. And surprisingly, it was not a therapy session. It was in the very early days of my design career. After 6 months of working in a design agency, I've decided to look for my second job, which would be more an in-house designer job. And I had 6 months of experience under my belt, which was not a lot by any means. And I started looking online. I found an offer that I really, really loved because it was a product for creating charts and dashboards, like a charting experience. And it was great because it was enterprise, it was SaaS, and it was a very complex product. So perfect as my next step. I was so excited and I sent the CV, I've sent my portfolio that I had back then, and they actually replied and invited me to a call. So after the first call, I was then invited to an in-person interview, and it was with the boss of the company, and this boss was very bossy. In Polish, we call it onion management, and it's not because people cry like when cutting an onion, although it could be. It's basically when someone has no idea about managing people, but they kind of had to do it because their company grew or they were put in this position for whatever reason. And they yell at people, they micromanage, they do all the bad practices there can be. And after talking with this person for like 2 minutes, I already knew that it will be a disaster, but the meeting continued. So we started talking a little bit more about the design needs of the company. And I was talking honestly more to the chief of product than to the CEO because he seemed disinterested in the conversation. And the chief of product seemed like a really good professional. I was actually surprised that he's working in this company at all. And I would be their first designer, the first full-time designer. So far, they were working only with with freelancers. And actually, it's an interesting choice to interview someone with 6 months of experience to be your very first lead designer in a company. They showed me the designs that they had for the ongoing project from those freelancers who they worked with. Honestly, horrible. No strategy, no process, no thinking about usability, no usability testing, nothing. Just pretty pictures that will clearly not work in the product. And this was my very first light bulb moment. Someone got paid for those designs, and probably a lot because they came to the conclusion that it would be easier and more and better for them financially to hire someone full-time in-house. So they asked me what I thought about those designs, and I respectfully pointed out that some things could be done differently and how I would go about it. And this product person, he was so impressed with basics, but to each its own, he was ready to learn about design and willing to learn about design. And also keep in mind that it was in Poland, so Central Europe, 10 years ago. So it was this awkward moment when the transformation from front-end developers being designers and to hiring full-time actual dedicated UX designers was taking place. So outside of American companies who had offices in Poland and maybe some more innovative companies, it was still considered quite modern to be even hiring designers. That's why it was the first hire. So this is like a background to help you understand the situation a little bit. And the CEO was visibly bored with the conversation, and at some point he just left the room without saying anything. Then he came back without saying anything and just started questioning what I was saying about doing research and about the need for thinking about the flows and just doing like basic UX practices, because he was worried about how much it would cost, how much time it would take. And basically the message was, it's not needed to do research because I have a gut feeling. And then I realized that in this room, where I was with a leadership of a fairly successful product, I knew the most about design, even though I only spent 6 months working in an agency and 6 months freelancing and learning design, basically, because I took the time to do the things right and learn correct practices and the best practices in the UX world. And then I had this realization that only because someone is interviewing me, only because they are already working in this company or maybe they are fairly successful, doesn't always mean that they are better than me. It doesn't mean that when I go for an interview, I need to be looking and craving for validation from these people to just justify that I am there and I should be there. Because honestly, no offense, many of these people shouldn't be there. And even if they are, because there are so many talented people and talented teams, it still doesn't mean that you need to crave their validation and feel inadequate in a position because you are being interviewed for work that they are already doing in a company. I realized I had so much value to offer, and with every minute passing of this meeting, I was more secure in my design skills, basically. And I didn't take this job, I was offered the job, but honestly, it would be a nightmare, but I've learned so much during this interview and I am so grateful that it happened because it fixed my attitude to all the recruitment processes, all the interviews for the future, and basically the whole career and approach to my career. And I realized that I have value. Even with so little experience that I had, I can still contribute to the company. And there is no point in fearing that someone will classify me as incompetent or inexperienced when deep down, I myself know that I am and I can contribute some value. So this one meeting brought my confidence from the floor, or let's be honest, it was like on a -3 level, to a decent first floor, which was a great success for me back then. So was I cured from my imposter syndrome? No, of course not. It was not a magical solution, but I took a really big step forward, and it made me realize that I can look for ways to make my brain think less about how worthless I am and how I don't deserve the opportunities that I'm getting, and start feeling better in this whole career and in generally in my life. And I started to ask myself, but why do I even feel this way? I really wanted to get to the core of it because always in my head there was this irrational fear about getting exposed. But exposed for what? Because I wasn't lying in my CV, I wasn't lying in my portfolio, I had no lies, nothing to be exposed for, but still something was bothering me. And then I thought, is it me or is it about them? Am I feeling inadequate or incompetent, or do I fear that other people will think so? And of course, there was this small factor of what if they think that I am good enough right now, they will hire me, and then there will be some kind of problem that I cannot solve. But I could actually explain it to myself, like, I will ask for help, I'm just a junior designer, it's totally normal, nobody knows everything. So this wasn't it. I think it was more about those like mean questions when they ask you, but why should we hire you if you have no experience? Or you have no experience, how are you going to contribute to the company? It's more about in this direction. And deep down, I knew that I can already contribute value. I can create great designs. Even though I still have a lot to learn, I can push the company forward. And it was more about other people seeing me as incompetent or inexperienced. And I think that from the time perspective, I can analyze it even deeper. And usually people think that imposter syndrome is more about self-worth or low self-worth or just feeling insecure. But I think it is more about guilt and shame. It's possible to feel guilty about an opportunity that you receive and you feel like you didn't deserve it or someone else deserved it more or you didn't work quite hard enough for it. Or you can feel shame or possibility of shame or fear of shame from people who will try to like expose you or be mean to you or portray you as inadequate or maybe laugh at your dreams or laugh at your expectations from work or salary expectations. And it actually happened once to me with one of the interviews when a person asked me about the salary expectations and I said what I would like to earn. And they asked me about what I'm earning right now in my current job. And I wasn't educated enough back then because it was a long time ago to answer that I didn't want to answer this question. I didn't know it was a possibility. I just answered with a number and they said, they pay you so much? Like for the experience that you have, they pay you so much? They were like shaming me and trying to like force me to take a job with lower salary or something. I don't know what the goal was, but the reality was that like this fear of shame that I had just materialized in this moment. I also wanted to mention this limiting belief that I used to have that if something wasn't hard enough, it means that I didn't deserve it. So if it didn't take me endless hours to do something, sleepless nights, I didn't bleed a little and almost fainted, it means that I don't deserve this opportunity. And it's such a harming, limiting belief, because when you think about it logically, if something comes easily to you, it means that you are talented in this direction and you should actually pursue this direction, and you deserve every single thing that you got because you are talented. It's something that you were created for, right? And at the same, it's quite funny because my brain could completely convince me in an opposite direction. So if something was really hard for me to achieve, I had to put a lot of work and effort. I was thinking, yeah, if I had to put so much effort to achieve it, it means I'm not talented and I'm not good enough, and I'm actually an imposter in this direction, in this situation as well, because if I was really created for it, it would just come easily to me. So you can tell that my mind could play tricks on me no matter the situation. I was never safe. It also seems to me that I was looking at myself from the old perspective, so the perspective of my old self. I didn't catch up to the progress that I made. So I was looking at myself from the eyes of a person who knows nothing about the design, who's just learning about design, and I didn't realize that there was this shift, that now I'm a designer and now I can design and I made so much progress. And I think it happens to many people that if something, especially when something happens relatively quickly, we don't catch up with this personality shift. And it's a good idea, I think, to take a look at the progress that you've made. So for example, look at the very first project that you've started with, and then look at your recent project and compare how much progress you've made, or compare your work with other people who are starting with you, or maybe other junior designers who are just starting. I think that it can also help cure this a little bit. And I think it also happens in other areas of my life, because recently I've made a lot of progress in the gym because I locked in my nutrition, I locked in my training, I was just going for it for like 3-4 months, and I really built a lot of strength. And I was doing bench press mostly for the chest exercises, and I wasn't doing the flies, so when you open with the weight like this. And after those 4 months, I decided to switch up my training a little bit, and I came back to the flies, and I took my regular weight, which was like 4 kilograms dumbbell, which is really light. And I started doing this exercise, and I'm like, oh, this is my old weight. This is my old self doing this exercise. I need to switch it to something heavier, like 7, for example, 7 kgs. And I realized, okay, I'm my new self, the stronger self who made this much progress. And because it happened so quickly, because I think the technique just improved, probably I didn't build that much muscle, but still, I need more weight. So I think it just happens in every area of your life. And also when analyzing everything, I came up with an interesting exercise that you can do, I recommend doing. So basically, if your mind is playing with you anyways, let's play with your mind, but let's do it to our advantage. Let's ask ourselves, what would I do if I were not an imposter? Like, how would I behave if I actually was a designer? How would I answer questions? How my portfolio would look like? Would I do anything differently in my projects or in my interviews? Would anything change if I was actually a designer? And the question is no. The answer is no. You would do the same exact things. So this means you are not an imposter. You're living the reality. You're not pretending. I hope it makes sense. It made so much sense to me when I did it for the first time. You can also ask yourself, what is missing for me not to feel like an imposter? What would need to happen for me so I don't feel like an imposter? And dig deeper and try to fix those things. And probably the first thing that will come up is I don't have enough experience. So ask yourself, okay, you're claiming to be a junior designer or just starting as a designer. So how much experience do you have? From 0 to probably 2.5, 3 years. And it is a standard. It is totally okay, and it is normal for a junior designer to have that much experience. So move on, it's fixed. Another thing, better portfolio, better projects. Are your projects relevant to the level that you're claiming to be on? So are your projects relevant regarding quality to a junior designer level? If yes, fixed, move on. Do you feel like you did a good job? Deep down inside, do you know that you pushed when it was uncomfortable to push, that you made progress, that you've learned a lot, that you improved over time? Do you feel like it deep down inside? Can you see your progress? If yes, it's completely fine. You're in the clear. Let's move on. And probably you would also say that it would fix your imposter syndrome if you were to get hired. So someone approving of your skill set and wanting to work with you. And I think this is quite valid, but you need to think about it this way. would you do anything differently, or would you know anything more if you were to get hired? So imagine today you're not hired, you are looking for a job, and tomorrow you get hired. Does anything change within those 24 hours? Are you a better designer? Are you solving problems differently? No, it's impossible. You're the same person, basically. So it is also not really a valid way to think about it. And it actually led me to thinking about yet another limiting belief, that we need a stamp of approval from someone or something or somewhere to actually feel like a professional. And don't get me wrong, I know where it's coming from, and it is important to be approved by your peers, to have people you want to work with and people who want to work with you, that you can collaborate on something, that you can achieve certain results. It is important for your career, but I wouldn't let this or lack of this approval make me feel worthless at the very beginning of my career. That's just unreasonable. And I think we are conditioned by society to believe that we need a stamp or a diploma, like a university diploma, to really have our career or to really be valid as a professional. And honestly, degree is worth nothing without application, and application experience is worth so much more. If I were to base my design work or my first job search only on what I've learned in the university, on the during the UX design course or graphic design course that we had or whatever it was, I would never find a job, because it was, I don't want to say it was worthless, but actually it was so basic that going into the course, I already knew about all of those things. So it wouldn't help me a lot because it was just so basic and really irrelevant to everything that I was doing back then, because I was already working. So yeah, just keep this in mind, that the stamp of approval is not really that important or as important as it seems at the very beginning. Another thing that you can possibly do to validate yourself as a professional is to have a really successful project under your belt. So something that really blew up and you designed and it was an extremely successful thing for a company. And realistically speaking, how many of us can have this kind of success during our career, or how long you would have to wait for it? Because not every project is successful, or it can be moderately successful. But for something to really blow up, there are multiple factors. And also your brain can really convince yourself that you only contributed to it because it was a team effort and you didn't do that much. So I would say it will be an endless cycle if you don't take care of it. And also you need to think about, to be successful, you need to feel confident. You cannot wait to feel confident until you have a major success, because it may not happen ever, because you need this confidence to actually execute something that is successful. So breaking the cycle and thinking about it very early on even would be probably a good idea. And of course, the imposter syndrome is so much easier to beat when you already were hired and are successful in your job and you were accepted by your tribe of designers and you're, making progress there. But even if you're at the beginning of your design career or in a moment where you're looking for a job, you can still think about it this way. When you're invited to a recruitment call, they saw something in you. There is this possibility in their mind that, hey, this person can contribute value, and we hope that this person will turn out to be what we think they are based on their portfolio and CV. So they sort of accepted you already a little bit, and they are looking out for you to be successful. So it's a little thing, but maybe switching this thinking can also help you. And speaking of feeling insecure before the recruitment process, so let's imagine that you have a call tomorrow and there is not much more time to fix anything but your mindset. So let's try to fix our mindset a little bit. So what helped me a lot is analyzing bad scenarios that my brain is imagining. So your brain is usually imagining the beginning of a bad scenario. So something will happen, and what else? What next? And you need to try to continue this scenario. So if something bad happens, I will fix it this way, or I will talk about this, and this thing. And those scenarios then just become less scary because you already have a solution in mind. And you can also recall the last time that you overcame a given obstacle. So I passed this test in the past, or I went through this call, or I did this difficult thing. And just remember that you are capable of those things. And even today, I get stressed out before the customer calls or before the calls, like the recruitment calls for sure, and other things in my life in general. I'm quite anxious socially in those scenarios as well. And the most ridiculous thing that I'm getting anxious for are calls with users, like research calls, where I literally ask people about how they use their product, what they're doing in their life in general regarding the product or about the flow, how they solve a problem in a particular scenario. It's not even usability testing. We're not testing anything that I've designed. I'm just talking to people to find out about them, which is literally no pressure. And always before the call, I have this ridiculous mindset of like, please don't show up, please don't show up, please don't show up. And I don't know, I'm battling it because I don't want to be like this, but there's always this thing in my head that like maybe it will not happen. And there's literally nothing to be scared or anxious about. So, it stays with you, but maybe it can be fixed a little bit. Another absurd belief that I had at the beginning of my design career was that everyone who's already working, they know what they're doing. So if you were hired by a company, you just know what you're doing at your job, which is so not true. I think that also it might have been an age thing because I was like 19 around the age, and I thought that people who have been working for some time are around 30 years old. They just have it all figured out. And now that I'm almost 30, yeah, we don't. We have some things figured out, and many designers have a lot of design things figured out, but definitely not 100% and not in all areas of life. So it was interesting how my perspective shifted after, let's say, a decade. And I remember getting my very first 6-figure job, and I felt like it was my first big girl job. I negotiated my salary because they offered 105 and I negotiated into 120, I think. So I was so proud of myself. And I went to this company and people were amazing and everyone was really, really knowledgeable, like a very high level. And then I realized after some time that there are some areas that those people, even though that they have a more senior title than me or they earn more than me, they still have some shortcomings where I'm better in certain areas than they are. And it's completely normal. And it was a light bulb moment for me, realizing that, I thought that people in those companies with such high salaries are like gods and gods of design. And they are not. They're normal people. They work with what they can do and they just try their best, and everyone is doing it, no matter the level, no matter where they are from. It's just something not to put people on a pedestal for their title or maybe how much they earn. I think it was a really important moment in my career as well. And in moments like this, you realize your own value. And that's why I think it's really important to praise people and also for yourself, to praise yourself a little, to compare your progress from 6 months ago to today, to just feel a little bit better about yourself. And a similar thing happened to me actually with YouTube. So some time ago, I was talking to someone who were just starting YouTube. And I tried to explain all the things regarding cameras, how to talk to camera, how to script your videos, how to use a microphone, like all of the things that you just need, basic stuff to start your YouTube channel. And we were talking for 2 hours to cover only those basics. And I had so many more topics to talk about. So I realized that even though I don't have like 1 million subscribers yet, I still have a lot of knowledge to share and I made so much progress. And I've heard this term, the curse of knowledge. So as you learn more and more, it just becomes a new norm for you. And you sort of assume that everyone else knows those things and it's nothing difficult, but it's not. And actually it happened to me as well when I started teaching design, when I didn't realize how many things I know and how many things I had to learn. And I had to really think hard about where to start explaining design and explain certain concepts to people. And the more you accomplish and the more you know, the less knowledgeable you think you are, because you realize how much more is there to learn and how bigger of a domain it is. So if you think that your imposter syndrome will just magically disappear when you get better at designing, I have bad news for you. It will not. Unless you work on it, it will stay there just on another level. And about this 1 million followers part, don't compare yourself with the person who's on step 10 or step 100 and you're on step 1. It just doesn't make sense. You can get inspired, but don't get discouraged with how big and long the journey is and how big of a difference it is. So for example, when you're working in a company and you're looking at a design director who just executed an amazing project with so many details and everyone is praising them, great. Look at them and try to get inspired. Try to see what they are thinking about on a daily basis, how they approach the strategy, what is their thought process, and you will see how differently they approach certain things because of the experience that they have, and try to align with those. Try to, copy those behaviors sometimes a little bit and copy this mindset so you will get faster to where they are. So learn from it, but never think to yourself, oh, they are so much better than me, I will never get there. Like, I can't even say those things because I don't talk to myself like this. I talk to myself like, okay, this is the plan, this is where we're going, those are the next 3 steps, let's move on. Okay, I've been talking this whole time about how you are good enough and how you should believe in yourself, and all of this is valid, but maybe, just maybe, you are actually not ready yet, and that's totally okay too. Maybe you need to take some time to polish your skills, to improve your portfolio, to do whatever it takes to make you feel like you're ready to go and you feel confident. Because believing in yourself doesn't mean lowering your standards. Sometimes it's hard to draw the line between I am actually not good enough yet and I need to work on stuff versus I don't feel like I'm good enough, so I will just hermit here and just wait for the feeling that I'm good enough. And I think this is the hard part of any career progression, to just not get stuck in the analysis paralysis or just overthinking, but at the same time to know when you actually need to improve and make progress. So if there is a possibility that you actually are an imposter or that you actually are lacking some skills, just take a step back, fix it, and come back when you're ready to do it. And in every single thing that you learn, there is this discovery period where you don't know anything or you know just some things and it just doesn't make sense altogether. And I think that in tech, it is relatively long because it also is that you cannot just do it in isolation. You need to work on real life projects with real teams. So the sooner you can do it, the better. But give yourself time to actually explore and prepare, and sometimes even over prepare. I'm a big believer in over preparing. Like, I don't understand how people put together IKEA furniture just by looking at the next step or the current step. I need to read the whole thing and then come back and execute properly. And it is completely okay to just start over. If you think that your portfolio is just shitty or you don't know enough about research, just scratch it, do it all over again, learn more. And it took me personally a couple of tries to get my portfolio right. So if you're in a similar situation, just saying, there is a template in the description, there is free portfolio masterclass in the description, so all the resources are there. So if you need to scratch your portfolio and do it all over again, I'm here for you. And on that note, I keep my fingers crossed for you overcoming your imposter syndrome. And if you liked this video, YouTube thinks that you will like also this one. Let me know in the comments if you have the imposter syndrome and how you overcame it. And thank you so much for spending the time with me, and I'll see you over in the next one.